Alright, so let's go ahead and create a supersaw. So with my instance of Serum, first thing I'm going to do here is bump up the voices. Pretty good. And I'm going to sort of scale back on the amount of detuning I have here. Somewhere around 0.08. We can even out all of those voices here, make some slight adjustments. Next thing I'm going to do is route this oscillator A to our filter simply by engaging it. We can keep it at a slope of 12 dBs per octave. That's fine. That sounds pretty good. I'm also going to go ahead and bump up the resonance just a bit. Now let's make a duplicate of this oscillator. So in the menu, I'm going to select copy oscillator A to B. Now I have two identical copies. Let's begin to add a slight detune between both of these oscillators. So on one side, we'll set it to, let's say, -3 and +3. So this will add a slight amount of detune in between both oscillators A and B, and it has this nice phasey sound to it. I'll lower the volume since I've added a new oscillator to our signal. Next thing I'm going to do is make sure that oscillator B is routed to our filter. We can also go ahead and spice things up with some white noise. So in our analog menu, let's head on over to bright white. I'll deactivate oscillator A and B, and I'll have it bypassing the filter. All right, so this is what we're going to be adding. And so let me engage oscillator B and oscillator A. You can hear the difference. So it's coming in pretty raw and it's not being filtered, and that's fine. Next thing I want to do here is turn our attention to envelope number 1. We're going to bump up the release time here. Notice how it creates a sort of artificial reverb. And this is what we had before. Nice long tail at the very end. I'll keep mine at about 500 milliseconds. Now before moving on, let's add some grit to our sound. I'm going to bump up the drive here as well as the fatness. Big difference. I'm also going to scale back on that volume. All right, now we're talking. All right, let's see if we can vary oscillator B a little. One thing I like doing is using different algorithms for our waveform here. And so let me deactivate oscillator A and our noise generator. Gets a little boxier once we do this. So we'll have a little more mid-range to this supersaw sound, if you will, as opposed to... All right, let's keep it at about, let's say 39, maybe 40%. Somewhere around there. This is to taste. I'll reactivate my oscillator A and my noise generator. Nice full sound. Let's turn our attention to the effects control, and the first effect I'm going to mess with will be the hyper dimension. Nice sounding little module here. I'll exaggerate it and then we can scale it back. Got some phasing going on here, which I think is very much needed for this particular sound. Next up will be the reverb. I'm going to slide it right after the hyper dimension, and I'll dial in some settings. All right, let's listen into that reverb. So I'm going to set the dry wet control to 100%. And this way I'm able to hear what's going on with the dampening control or the high cut. All right, I want that top end. I like that nice, 10K area. Sounds nice and shimmery. And now I'm going to scale back on my reverb. That's pretty nice. I'll bump up the size control as well as the decay. That's pretty nice. That's nice and lush. I'll apply some low cut. I'll exaggerate it and then I'll scale it back. We're thinning out the sound now, or at least the reverb. And then now we are adding a little more low mids. That's nice. Let's bring in a compressor so we can really accentuate that reverb. There we go. I'll add some makeup gain. The order of the effects will actually affect the signal. So now I have my reverb right before the compressor. Listen to the tail. Now let's see what happens once I slide my reverb after the compressor. I like it with the reverb before the compressor. I think it sounds a lot more epic. All right, let's see if we can ramp things up even more. I'm gonna apply some sub to the signal. I'm gonna drop it by an octave and use the square wave here. And let's replay that line. All right, so I'm not gonna send this to our filter. I'm gonna leave it as is. Another thing we can do here is apply a little bit of portamento, make things a little more, I guess, dramatic. Let me exaggerate it so we can hear what this is doing, and then I'll scale it down. All right, that's a little over the top for this style. So I'm going to lower this to, let's say, 9 or 10 milliseconds. All right, so we're not quite done. Let's see if we can do some detuning here, or add a little bit of detuning. I'm gonna head on to the matrix, select the source, scroll down to LFO number 1, set LFO number 1 to half notes. And the destination, instead of having it set to, let's say, a fine control here with oscillator A, I'll just choose the global master tuning, and this will be my amount right here. I'm gonna bump this up. It's going to sound a little wonky, but we're going to scale things back. Just want you guys to hear what this does. All right, clearly very wonky. I like to use this output control as a sort of dry wet control. Okay, and I'm also going to lower this amount here. We don't have to go overboard with this. All right, nice and subtle. Maybe I can keep this at, let's say, 2. This I can bump up a little more. Okay, we're also going to delay this LFO, so we can basically play the note and have this detune effect come in a little later in the signal. Eighth notes or quarter notes, it's all up to you. We can smoothen this up. All right, so this is a fairly versatile patch. Sounds good at the top range of the frequency spectrum as well as the bottom. A very versatile preset here. It works for a number of genres like synthwave as well as progressive house. Anyways, I wanted to hop on here really quickly and show you guys how to make a super saw. If you like this video, go ahead and give me a like. It really helps the channel here. And if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. And with that said, I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.